Hello everyone, I'm Jose and I'm the senior web developer here at NIA. 3 years ago, I was part of a small team tasked to put together a simple shared decision-making tool for the NIA community. And after initial designs and prototypes, our team realized that for this app to be truly effective, we would need a much better researched and designed set of tools, which is what we are proud to show you today. Thanks in big part to Wendy's direction and leadership. Wendy's our VP of Scientific and Clinical Affairs. Wendy will be walking us through the app, how to download it, and how to use it effectively. For more Eczema Awareness Month activities, please visit eczemamonth.org. Wendy?
Well, thank you, Jose, for that really kind introduction. And I'm so glad to see so many faces joining us here today to learn all about EczemaWise and hopefully what it will be able to help you with in terms of your daily management of eczema and working with your healthcare provider. So as Jose mentioned, what we have created in collaboration with many of you and in collaboration with healthcare providers, we're hoping was going to be a resource to help give you some insights into what's happening every day with your eczema, help you kind of collate all the information so many of us told you that you kind of keep track of in your head sometimes or on different pieces of paper, kind of keep that all in one place. But most importantly, help you use that information to figure out what's best for you in terms of navigating different treatment strategies, and perhaps even advocating with your healthcare provider for what you would like to have in terms of the best outcomes for your care. So what I'm going to do for a little bit is share my screen. I'm going to walk you through the web version of this app. It is available both as a web app as well as available as a native app, whether you have an Android device or an iOS device. For those of you who are in the US, you can use any of those, but for those of you joining us today who might be international, you are able to use the web app to do much of what you're going to see today. And as I said, that's what I'll be showing you on my screen. So let me go ahead and make sure I can share my screen. Okay, Jose, can I get a thumbs up that you're actually seeing the EczemaWise app there? Or okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this as well. And where we're starting out on this, and I'll try not to do too much scrolling up and down because I know that can probably be a little disorienting, so hopefully I'll do a reasonable job at navigating here. But I've already created an EczemaWise account, and so what precedes sort of landing on this particular area is actually registering for EczemaWise, going through a brief series of questions to help us know sort of who you are, and help you get right into beginning to learn and appreciate all that EczemaWise has to offer. And so when you get into EczemaWise, what you're going to see is actually sort of right at the top here is sort of an organization related to 5 different components. And the way that the EczemaWise is organized, starting on the far left here, I'll actually go back a little bit. This is what we call our home page. And what you're going to see on this particular page, whether you're tracking that day or not, is you're actually going to see some information from the National Eczema Association, different blog posts, as you see, they're in chronological order, that are going to give you some additional helpful information about managing eczema, other information from our organization, and we encourage you to look at this supplemental information as much as you feel is beneficial. Looking at the other bookend on these series of 5 tabs is what we have called a survey tab. You're probably very familiar with the fact that the National Eczema Association sends out surveys to you to better understand your eczema experience. And what we're hoping to do within the context of EczemaWise is give you a convenient place to respond to these surveys as they're available. And so as these surveys come out, you'll see them appear here and you'll actually get a notification that they're there for yourself to complete. But the main bulk of EczemaWise are in these middle 3 tabs, this Track, Learn, and Manage tab. And so to go back to the Track tab where we all started, what this actually is going to lay out for us is a series of 9 different trackers. And these are trackers that, like I said, you in conjunction with healthcare providers have told us, and as science also tells us, are some of the most common things that we want to understand and have documented in terms of understanding the impact of eczema on your life. And so just kind of taking these from top to bottom, the top is going to be a weather tracker, which is going to be based on a zip code that you're going to be providing during your registration process. So as you can see here, I live in the Midwest. It's kind of chilly today here in the Midwest. It's going to be raining for the next couple of days, but we know that weather is a very common trigger for eczema. And so very important to keep track of this information. There isn't necessarily anything that you need to do in order to have this information pulled in. As I mentioned, it's an automatic pull based on your zip code. The remaining 8 trackers, which I'll just kind of scroll through very quickly, we have skin, itch, skin pain, triggers, treatment, sleep, stress, and diet. And when I'm showing these to you on the web app, you'll see them all on the same page. But if you're looking at this on a mobile device, what you're actually going to see is a different page for each tracker. So it's a slightly different experience, but all the same trackers are there, and you'll be able to track in exactly the same way as what I'll be showing you today. Now, there's several different types of trackers that are in here, but what I want to share most importantly is that so the trackers that are in here, the majority of them are based on what we call validated outcome measures. And that's really important to be aware of, because what this means is that from a scientific perspective, from a clinical care perspective, this is where the best science is telling us that if we look at these things over a course of a period of time for your eczema, we know that this is going to be able to give you, your healthcare provider, researchers, the best information in a very consistent way and very validated and reliable way about what's actually happening in your life. And so we have tried where possible to use these different outcome measures to really ground the app in terms of the symptoms, so that everybody's capturing everything in a very consistent way and in a way that will be very meaningful in the context of your care with your healthcare provider. So beginning with skin, one of these trackers are actually set up this tracker is primarily set up to look at sort of the visible impact of eczema on your skin. It's actually going to walk you through a series of 4 different steps, which begins with affected areas of the body. As you can see, the body is actually broken up into front and back, and then a number of different areas in segmented ways. You can click on as many areas as is meaningful for you that day, or if it's a day that you don't have any affected areas, you can click that as well. And then you're going to move on. And for the sake of just continuing to move us through the conversation, what it's going to ask you then is a series of questions about the intensity of your skin symptoms. It's going to ask you about dryness, and these are all going to be on a scale of 1 to 3. And you can see the kind of the code over here for what each of those numbers are supposed to mean. But then it's gonna, so you would essentially slide the toggle bar to the right or to the left as you feel appropriate for that day. It's gonna ask about dryness, redness, swelling, oozing, scratch marks, and thickening skin. And all of these things are part of a tool which is called the Patient-Oriented Scoring of Atopic Dermatitis, which is a very well recognized and validated tool to understand from a skin symptomatic visual perspective what's happening in terms of the severity of these particular symptoms. So once you've entered in all of these different pieces of information, it's then going to ask you to put any notes that you feel are appropriate, if you have any infections that you might be dealing with on your skin, yes or no, and then takes you to the final page, which is where you have an opportunity to upload images of photos that you have taken of these particular body areas that you want to sort of link to what those visual symptoms are. And we know that a lot of you have told us that this is important for you to be able to document sort of how one day looks to the next, or to be able to share with your healthcare provider how your skin looks on any particular day or over a series of days. So we've embedded in here the opportunity for you to upload each day a maximum of 8 different pictures. And the way that this is set up is that for as many body areas as you have selected, you can then say, okay, I took a picture of the back of my head, and here's the picture that goes along with that. And you can have this correlation between the picture that you have as well as the scores that you have put in. I'm gonna go back. And then once you're done with that, you will just save that card. And as you can see, once it's done inputting all of the information, it gives you a different visual representation of all of the information that you've had in there. And we'll come back to this when we start talking about how you can use this information for insights. I'm going to take 4 trackers next in sort of bulk here: the itch tracker, pain, sleep, and stress. But I'll stay on itch and pain for now because the sleep and stress trackers look very similarly. These trackers are set up to be on what we call a numeric rating system of a 0 to 10. And while that's a very simple system to think about rating very significant symptoms as it relates to your eczema, it's actually been very well documented that this is a very impactful way to understand on on a long-term basis, how your itch, pain, sleep, and stress continues to either improve or not improve with different treatments or related to different exposures. And so essentially all you're going to do is you're going to be moving the tracker back and forth for any of them or as many of them as you want to track to your to the value that you think is important for that day, recognizing that in all cases a 0 is going to be essentially no symptoms or minimal symptoms, and then 10 is going to be the worst imaginable. And then you're going to record that, and you'll see that it will, again, similar to skin, it will turn to sort of a different representation of that information. And I want to point out that, you know, if in fact it is a 0, you don't have to be a 1 or above. A 0 is a valid indicator for it. So if you don't have any pain that day or itch that day, you can indicate it as a 0. The way a 10-point rating scale works is it's actually an 11-point scale. You have 0 counts and 10 counts. So everything in there works. So don't feel that you have to put a 1 if it's a 0 that particular day. And as I said, sleep and stress are exactly the same. The remaining trackers that are in here, triggers, treatment, and diet, I think we tend to think of these as sort of like exposures, you know, so things that you're encountering or doing in your daily life that are going to contribute potentially to your eczema getting better or worse. And so taking the trigger and the diet trackers first, the way I think about these is sort of like external things that you're exposed to, and then sort of like internal things that are happening that you're exposed to. So looking at the triggers, what we have done is we have embedded, and you'll see me scrolling down the list here, we have metals, chemicals, irritants, environmental allergens. We've put a number of things into these sort of broad categories that will help you pick in a very easy way some of the more common things, you know, so if we select irritants here as an example, that we know are potentially problematic. And so you can select those if that's important to you and that's something that you want to monitor, and you'll see that it selects it. However, if you want to get more granular, or you want to add something that's not on these lists, or you want to drill down a little more, for example, under environmental allergens is pet dander. Well, pets can be a lot of different things. They can be dogs, they can be cats, they can be guinea pigs. If you're concerned about documenting a particular one, you can do that. And all you would do is put some information in the other category, and you can save that as well. And now both of my triggers that I'm concerned about have been input here. The diet tracker works in pretty much the same way. It has both common allergens already listed in here, as well as cups of water if tracking your hydration is something that is of value to you. But again, it has that level of personalization or customization in the same way that the triggers do, in that, well, this is definitely some of the more common allergens that we know about. If there's something in particular that you want to track that is related to either flares, you're concerned you have an allergy to it, what have you, you can go ahead and add that in. I'll just put tomatoes as an example, and then you can add that to your profile as well and track that piece of information. And then the last one on here is treatment. And I saved this one for last because it's a little bit more extensive in terms of all of the different pieces of information that you can track here. But essentially, it's meant to do just as it says. It's meant for you to have a place to document what you have done in terms of different treatment strategies, whether they be over-the-counter or prescription therapies, to best manage your eczema. So what you'll see in this list here, I've already created a list of things that I'm considering using. I'll show you how you can modify this list. But bathing and moisturizing are already pre-populated in here because those are considered sort of baseline that everybody's doing. But we know that many have to step up to other different therapies. And so it gives you the option to add as many therapies in here or over-the-counter approaches as you think are that you're using or that change over time. And so while the moisturizing category you'll see as an example here is considered a very broad category, I've also added a level of specificity. I want to know if a particular lotion is working for me. But the way that this is generally going to work, and I'll just click on a steroid as well, just to give another example. What happens when you click a particular treatment is that it's going to give you this pop-up window of what time of day did you use it, or what times of day did you use it. So again, early morning, midday, late afternoon, evening, you can select as many as apply, and Once you have done that, you can hit save. Now, if there's ever a reason that you want to edit your treatments, I'm going to go back to our menu here. The way you do that is using this gear function that's up at the top of the treatment tracker. And I'm sure many of you are very tech savvy. When you see this, you know that this is going to take you to something that's related to settings for something that you are navigating. And so when we do this, it actually is going to take us to everything that is considered into our tracker settings. This is where your zip code information is stored. So if you move and you want to have a new zip code input here, that's where you would do it as well. But the most important menu in here is related to my treatments. And so again, recognizing that many of you have told us how your regimen changes over time, either by over the counter or because you're using different things in different areas, or you now are changing and moving maybe to away from topicals, and now you're choosing something else that's a little bit more like a biologic, for example, that is dupilumab. This is the place that you can add and delete treatments as your regimen changes. And so if you want to do that in this editing your treatment list, this is where you would do that. You have all of the different categories that are in here, but now let's say, for example, I'm going to be adding phototherapy, and I click this box. Now when I update my treatments, phototherapy is shown here. And if I reload my EczemaWise page here and I go back to my track, I will be able to see that in my pull down menu here as well. So phototherapy is now here for me to pick whether or not I did that. And so you can be again, to customize this, to keep this at a level that is important for you, what particular drugs you're interested in tracking. And if you're using this on the app, importantly, what this has is treatment reminders as well. You can set up reminders to say, please remind me to take my dupilumab, or to go to my phototherapy appointment, or whatever it is. And the app will actually send you a reminder notification to do that. You could actually use that as a reminder then to actually go in here and do the rest of the trackers if that is important to you. I'm going to save this. Oop. Did not pick my time of day. There we go. Okay, and so this is a broad overview of the different types of trackers that are in here. And just one point before we move on to the Learn tab is that the way that EczemaWise has been designed is that, you know, the more you use it, the more you'll learn about your insights and, excuse me, about your eczema insights and your personal experience and sort of trends, if you will, in your eczema journey. But we also recognize that it's important for you to track what's important to you. So perhaps not all of these things are going to be something that you are interested in tracking. I would suggest maybe as a starting point, you try each of the trackers to see what kind of information you feel is manageable for you to be putting in here. But at a minimum, we have heard from you that itch certainly is something that is a symptom that many of you have indicated is the most burdensome symptom. So perhaps looking at your skin, itch, and sleep are good places to start. And then you can layer on some of these others as well related to treatment if you're looking for a place to start. Now that I've input my trackers for the day, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the Learn tab. And what you can see here is that, excuse me, you'll have a graphical representation of the numerical values that you just put in on the previous slide for the things that are shown here on the far left, which are our skin, itch, pain, stress, and sleep. Those are going to be visually represented here. I didn't do sleep, so it shows me as a question mark for the day. But what you can see is that you're beginning to get a semblance of what my trends look like based on the different considerations that I've put in. What is nice about this particular page is that you can see as much or as little information as you want. You can keep it at a week. You can go back to a month if you're on the web version of this. I'm going to go back to a week. And then if you really want to get specific, you can go down to each individual day. And as you'll notice, when I change this little gray bar, the information summary here at the bottom changes. And so I can see now, okay, I went from something values in my sleep and in my stress that were higher on the 14th. What happened to me on the 15th? You know, let's take a look at some of those things. And you can begin to mine this information for, as I said, hopefully some insights into what your trends of disease is, as well as what symptoms might be more problematic or what might be triggering different components. And so hopefully you'll find that this is helpful information. And the way that this is set up is that you can also go back and if you forgot something over a period of 7 days, you can go back and revise your trackers. But after 7 days, everything is going to be pretty well locked down and you won't be able to revise things any longer. But we just appreciate that you might have a break in between tracking for a few days, but when you do go in, you might want to have a couple of days of activity that you're putting in. So this isn't something that you have to go into every single day, but we're hopeful that you'll put in information for as many days as is meaningful for you. Okay, then on to the Manage tab, the last one. This is all about a concept called shared decision making. This is about using the information that you have been putting in learning about yourself, but also sharing this with your healthcare provider, sharing it with them with the idea that they now have a better understanding of what's been happening with you since you last saw them, which in some cases can be several months probably. And it also gives them an opportunity to understand in a very specific way what's been happening. I think we've all been to the doctor and gotten the question sort of a how you doing, and it's kind of hard to answer that question in a very broad way. So this gives you something to really very specifically point to and say, well, you know, my itch has been here, my sleep has been here, my skin symptoms have been here, and hopefully that will give you really great jumping off points to consider or to have that conversation then with your healthcare provider. But what this tab also does is for the track page, that's primarily symptoms. But what this page is also going to layer onto it is also more quality of life related information and other considerations that are sort of what I think of as that surround sound. You know, we know that the impacts of eczema are broad and significant, and it's important in the context of having this conversation with your healthcare provider that they really understand sort of the world that you're living in and all of the things that factor into how you want to pursue treatment, things that are most important to you, and not just the particular symptoms that you might be experiencing. And so the way that you do this is you're going to be setting up appointment cards. And up here on the left is where you would click to add an appointment. I've already started one with my favorite Dr. Joe Schmo. And so we're going to be walking through very quickly how you prepare for these type of treatment or these appointments and use the information that you have been pulling into your trackers to help support these conversations. So we're going to start this with something that's called Find Focus. And essentially this page is all about having you communicate to your doctor what you want to do during that appointment. You know, is it just a touch base where you're looking to figure out how your symptoms have been doing? Are you interested in talking about new treatment options? Are you interested in talking about clinical trials? Has something else happened to you that they didn't know about previously? So you want to select as many of these as apply. I'm going to select a few just for the time being. What's important to you in considering an eczema treatment? This is a drag and drop list. And what's nice about this, we hope for you, is that it's intended to be dynamic. What's important to you one time at your visit may not be important the next time. You may have had a change in some of your circumstances. You may not like the way some of the treatments are working. And so what's important to you may shift. And certainly in this time of COVID, we know that with so many people, some of these considerations have changed. And so it's important to make sure that your healthcare provider is aware of these as well as they're thinking about and working with you to identify how you should best move forward in your eczema treatment care and management. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now, and you can add any notes. The next thing that you're going to do is a quality of life assessment. So as I mentioned, the rest of the trackers are more symptomatic tracking. This is more, tell me how your eczema has impacted your life. And it's going to break it down into 3 categories. It's going to break it down into sort of that overarching physical, kind of take everything together, rate it on a scale of 0 to 6. Where does it sit for you as of right now? And it's rating it for us during the past week. Emotionally, where does this line up for you? Is it worse, better? So you're going to rate that. And then the last is sort of bothered by that sort of social activities, things like that. Have you been able to do what you want to do, engage with others as you have wanted to do, or has your eczema impacted that negatively or not as much of late? So you're going to put whatever the value is for this, and then you're going to hit next. And then this section of the provider prep is if you are interested in talking with your healthcare provider about different treatments, or you want to understand a little bit more, this is where you can actually dive into the different treatments that are available. And I'll just click a few here just to give some examples. And I'll just pick dupilumab. This is where you can actually go in and you can see a little bit of baseline information about different, and I'll pick this one as another example just to show you that they all kind of give the same general information about how it works, who's it for, how do I use it, and what are some common side effects. And so if you're interested in talking with your healthcare provider about any of these, and you can click and save as many as apply, you hit this little save button at the top and it moves on over. And so now this information is going to be available for you into a printout that I will show you next. Okay. You can upload those affected areas, some of those images that you might want to save, and I don't have any, so I'm going to skip over this for now. But now what you're going to get is this appointment summary, and it's going to say basically, here's everything that you just put in, and for the little bit of time that I have been tracking, unfortunately, because it doesn't go back in time that far yet, I have these 3 days of data, but I'm going to show you one that I did some time ago, where it actually can give you up to 90 days worth of your data. And what's nice about this is now that you have this information, you'll see this green button down here at the bottom, which is download this summary as a PDF. What this gives you the opportunity to do is either to print this out and take it with you to your healthcare provider. You can have a copy, they can have a copy, and you can use this to record any notes. Or you can actually, if your healthcare provider has a patient portal that you can upload private information, health protected information to, you could upload it there directly. We don't have any direct connectivity to the physician offices, so this is something that you need to determine how it would be best to communicate to your healthcare provider to make sure that they have this information at the appointment, either in advance of the appointment or when you come in. So hopefully what I've been able to, I don't know how about so quickly necessarily, but there's a lot that's embedded here in EczemaWise, and we're hopeful that you will use as much of this information and as many of the features that are going to be important and valuable for you, and in not only understanding your own eczema journey, but working with your healthcare provider to get the care and treatment that will help get you to a place where you're feeling like you're able to have less impact on your life in all the different ways that it currently exists. So I'm happy to take any questions at this particular point, and maybe I will turn it back to Jose to help kick that off if there are any.
Thank you, Wendy. That was excellent. We do have a few questions. First question is from Rocky. Rocky, would you like to share your question with us? And you may have to unmute your microphone.
Sure, thank you. First of all, Wendy, oh my gosh, I think everyone is probably just saying, finally, something we've been waiting for. So my question is, a lot of times itch, pain, all these symptoms can have a different severity level on different body parts. So when we're ranking, say, itch, can we change the number on the area affected, or is it just an overall number?
That's a great question. It is an overall number, but what you're mentioning is an important consideration that we have also heard. And so what I think we're going to be looking at in the future with input from other members of the eczema community like yourself is, what else can we add into here that would allow us and you to have, you know, sort of that breakdown of information in a way to communicate, you know, like you said, on my face, the itch is really bad, but here elsewhere on my body, it isn't as bad. So I think this is our, you know, this is step one. You know, I think we're envisioning a lot of future potential based on additional feedback from you all. But as of right now, the itch and all of the trackers are intended to be sort of an overarching sort of global assessment of how you're feeling related to those symptoms.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Paola also had a question. Paola, would you like to ask your question?
Hey, I just want to say it was a great presentation. I love the app. So I'll be out of the country for a couple of months, and I just wanted to know if I'm going to be able to use the app or if I am going to have to use the web.
If you're going to be international, I would recommend that you use the web app version of it. That way you make sure you have all of the the connectivity to it. I don't think that the native app will work if you're international.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Excellent. And then we also have a question from Chetna, and I got to find it here on the chat real quick. Oh boy, the chat got pretty busy. Okay, there it is. What is the data privacy / how is our data stored? When did you have
Say, Jose, if you want to take that one, because I know this is our Jose's area of expertise.
Right. So from a technical standpoint, everything is very well locked up on our servers. There are many layers between you and the server, and the data is anonymized, and we don't share our data with anyone else in the sense that no one has access to our servers or databases. There might be one person, which is probably me, who can access a database on our server, and maybe another developer. But really, it's locked up tight. We know that's very important. Okay, let's see. And we also have a question from Rachel. Rachel, would you like to ask your question?
Sure. Hi, Wendy and everybody. I really appreciate all this effort. It was a lot of effort. And I'm definitely going to give the app a try and put all my data in. But once all our data is in, the last slide that had the graph, there's like a lot of lines going in a lot of directions. And how do you take that and make sense of it? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think we're going to be working with a lot of members of the eczema community to develop resources that will help you do just that. Part of it is to understand that overall sense of things, and maybe turning things on and off will enable some features to turn things on and off so you can see where things go. But I think in terms of understanding, first that broad pattern, it is helpful to know if it is, things tend to stay the same, if things are up and down is really an initial good starting point. And to identify in looking at some of the specific days, perhaps if there's anything that is either maybe preceding something that is a drop or preceding something that is an increase in severity on any one of the trackers would be a good place to start. It's no doubt that there's a tremendous amount of information in there, Rachel, and it is a lot to understand. But I think, from my lens, understanding sort of that, what the big picture is first, does it, do things look like a straight line? Are things a lot of up and down is really important as a starting point, and is probably more information than we suspect many have collected in the past. And so just understanding and starting with that is sort of entry level one, and then drilling down to sort of maybe some preceding information around peaks and valleys, if you will, would be another place to start.
Yeah, I love the ability to eventually turn off certain factors, and then you could really see the ones that, you're concerned about. Sounds great.
Excellent. Wendy, we also had a question about supplements and where can we track those?
By supplements, I'm not sure who submitted the question, but I'm assuming that means like dietary supplements. So if I'm seeing as how I still have the screen up here in the diet, let me go back in here. I would, if it is in fact a dietary supplement, I would suggest putting that in the open text field box, that this is something that you are taking. The other place that you could add it is in, so that's one suggestion. The other suggestion could be to put in treatment if it's something that has been recommended by your healthcare provider to take. You could put that, most supplements are over-the-counter medication, so you could put that in the over-the-counter category as well. So two options there, I think, depending upon what it is.
Excellent. Those are the questions that we have from the chat, it seems like. Wendy, can you tell us about the benefits of just generally just tracking? Like, why would I want to use this? Why would I, over time?
Yeah, well, I mean, so for the most part, I think the value that we have heard from many is that a lot of the healthcare providers, they don't necessarily know all of the different ways that eczema impacts your life in terms of the degree that it impacts you on a very personal level. There's a lot of commonalities certainly within the eczema journey and eczema experience, but how eczema affects each person very specifically is very unique to them. And so this is a way for you to sort of be your own best advocate in terms of not only knowing what that information is for yourself, but being able to use that to better your own self-care if there's things that you can do for yourself, but also then working with your healthcare provider to identify strategies and approaches that are in alignment with how your health has been tracking, but also the outcomes that you most want to see happen. And so it is a way for you to be more engaged with your healthcare provider and with yourself in terms of helping to support your overall well-being. And at the same time, you know, it's a way to do it in a consistent manner so that from sort of time A to time Z, you know, you're collecting information in the same way. So recall isn't a factor anymore. You don't have to try to dive into your memory banks to pull all of the information out. It's all right there, right in front of you, and wherever your phone or you're at your computer, you have access to that information.
Excellent. And who can use EczemaWise? Is there age restrictions or anything of the sort?
Yeah, right now, that's a great question. And right now we do have EczemaWise set up to be used for adults with eczema. So you have to be age 18 and older, or you have to be a care provider that is age 18 or older. And it's obviously set up like that. As you can imagine, with health-related information and data privacy that was already mentioned, that's something that is incredibly important for everyone, but certainly important for minors. And so it has been set up with that restriction in place for that reason.
Excellent. And I did want to remind people that EczemaWise is free. Doesn't cost any money to download and try out. We do have another question. It says, how are we defining itch? And how do we record it? As an AD sufferer, the skin will always be itchy in different places at different times of the day. So with 0 would be our normal itch baseline, and numbers 1 through 10 would reflect the skin being more itchy than normal. Or if we experience any itch, we should record it accordingly. So how do we handle measuring our itch throughout the day?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think highlights the individuality of how itch is experienced, perhaps uniquely amongst different individuals. And so I will point out that with the itch tracker here, the way that this is set up, and let me go back to it here, to the instructions, is that, you know, in the past 48 hours. So as mentioned, I think earlier, one of the questions was, you know, how should you be tracking itch, and if it's a global versus a specific area of the body. So this is intended to be an average, if you will, of the past 48 hours. What has your itch been across all of your body? So if, so I'm trying to understand the question and respond the best way as possible. If there's always a baseline level of itch, it may not be that you ever have a 0. So I wouldn't necessarily record a 0 unless you had no itch. That's not the way the tool is intended to work. The tool is intended to record sort of the intensity of that itch over that 48-hour period of time. And so if you think your baseline level of itch is a 2 or a 3, but then can go up to a 10. That's how you should be thinking about it, would be my recommendation. But a 0 should really be reserved for no itch. You know, you don't have anything. It shouldn't be where there's even a low level. It shouldn't be used if you have even a low level of baseline average itch over 48 hours. It's really intended to be when you don't have any. And for some, that may not be possible.
What about medications that are not for eczema? Do I track those?
So the way that the platform has been designed is that the treatments that are going to be listed in there are going to be primarily treatments that are going to be eczema specific. So if you're concerned that a treatment that you are using is impacting your eczema, or is being used to treat your eczema, then you should put it in here. But the trackers weren't designed, like if you also have high blood pressure, for example, you know, it wouldn't necessarily be the place that you would record your heart or your blood pressure medications unless you were concerned that it was impacting what was happening with your eczema.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Wendy. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We're very happy to be sharing this with you. I'm very happy. I've been working on this for a long time, so I'm happy that it's out there. And many thanks to our Eczema Awareness Month sponsors, Sanofi Genzyme Regeneron, AbbVie, Eli Lilly, Water Wipes, Baby Dove, CeraVe, and Dermavant. And please, everyone, visit eczemamonth.org throughout this month. We're very excited to be sharing all this stuff with you. Thank you, everyone.